All right, it is 6:30. Sue, everyone is here. Our attendees are slowly coming in and they'll increase as the meeting progresses. So I will turn it over to you. Just a reminder to everybody to leave your mics muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sue Burness, Dublin's Director of Communications and Public Information, and I welcome you all to the Fall 2020 Neighborhood Association Leadership Meeting. It's been a while since we've gathered together. In fact, it was a year ago last fall. We planned on having the spring meeting in April, but as we all know, COVID-19 hit in March and changed our worlds and how we live, work, and do business. And what a year it's been. And that was also during the time when the state had the mandatory stay-at-home order, and the city was focused on continuity of governance, along with interpreting and keeping up with the evolving state orders and guidance from Franklin County Public Health. We really appreciate your willingness to participate in this virtual meeting via WebEx events. And it looks like we've got a little over 20 of our neighborhood association leaders online, and hopefully we will have more, as I believe we had quite a few more register for this evening. We have some important updates, and these are based on the topics of interest that you provided us in the survey this summer. We are also going to allow for plenty of time to take feedback, comments, and questions from all of you. But since this is a WebEx event and many of us may not have experienced this kind of virtual meeting, I'm going to review how the meeting will go. To keep the meeting moving in the most efficient manner, we will not take any questions after the presentations. We will take questions for our speakers and questions for our senior leadership and members of our management team that are also on the call as an attendee tonight at the end of the meeting during the Q&A session. You will see a little box at the bottom of your screen to the right, and it is a Q&A dialogue box. You can type in questions during presentations, and we will try to address those at the end. You can also ask your questions live during the Q&A session. You won't be able to unmute your microphone, as Bruce has mentioned, but when I call your name out, Bruce will unmute you and you will be able to ask your question for all of us to hear. There may be questions we don't get to at the end, but we promise we will get you answers from our city experts, and we will follow up with you in a communication that will come out next week with the link to this YouTube video that you will be able to share with your neighbors as well, and then the questions and answers that you're hoping to get. So let's get this started, and I have the honor of introducing our Dublin Mayor, Chris Ambrose-Grooms, who are going to provide the welcome this evening.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. It is really nice to see all of these names in the attendee list. I think the hardest part about COVID is not seeing people, not being able to feel the warmth from one another and really be together. And I think probably most of us are missing that dearly. So I want you to know that we miss you dearly in person this evening. But we are virtually joined here by our Vice Mayor, Kathy Grossa.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Good, and we have here with us well. And I know Jane Fox is with us. Jane's beautiful face. So I want you to know that your city council misses you. We miss being with you. We miss interacting in person with you. But we are very proud, as Sue mentioned in the introduction, governance. And that's been something that's been extremely important to all of us. And Dana Mcdaniel, our city manager, has led that team really well in making sure that all of our essential services have been met. So we're confident that you are in great hands tonight and that there will be a lot of good information distributed. We will get a summary of some of these questions, and if there's anything that we can help with, we will certainly stand ready to do so. And I believe we have a video now that will play for you, I think. Sue will be running. It's going to just go over a few things and some for you. So thank you for your time. I tell you, the most important thing that happens in this community is that we communicate with each other, and all of you, our HOAs and presidents and all of those folks are really the key to making sure that we're all 50,000 many hands make light work, correct? So you are hands work. So with that, I will turn it over to Dana and team, and I believe they have a video to watch. So welcome, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Ambrose Crooms.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dana McDaniel, Dublin City Manager, and I too want to welcome all of you this evening. And thanks for joining us, and thanks to our council members for joining us as well. We appreciate their being here to share any insight and answer any questions that you may have as well. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you briefly, and we've got a lot to cover tonight, so I just wanted to take a few minutes. It's kind of hard to cover much more than what the video already showed you. I mean, I think the video covered a lot of the key things that we were facing over the last few months and how we managed to work together to address those. But first and foremost, let me echo what Mayor Amaros Groom said, and on behalf of Dublin City staff, I want to thank all of the HOA leadership throughout the community for all that you do and your volunteerism to help your neighborhoods, and most of all for your partnership in working with us to help with communication efforts, and particularly during the last 7 months as we've been going through this COVID-19 disaster or emergency situation that we've been in. You've been helpful more than you probably know or could imagine in helping us to get the word out, getting feedback, helping us to understand the situation that's going on in the neighborhoods, especially when we were first starting out in this situation, excuse me, and not quite being aware of how everyone was responding to this, where, we had neighbors that were particularly vulnerable or in need. You all were extremely helpful in helping us to understand who those folks were so that we could bring to bear additional resources. And of course, you did that yourselves by taking care of your neighbors, which we all greatly appreciate. Certainly, we have been working to provide essential services. I think the city, from the time we declared the emergency shortly on the heels of the state of Ohio, we went into emergency management mode with a focus on providing all the essential services that are necessary for the community. I think really at the end of the day, the city continued to provide all the services that it normally provides, with just really more exceptions than not. And the exceptions were in the rec center. We obviously had to shut that down for a while and then ramp it back up. Access to playgrounds and playing courts and playing fields and things were significantly hindered by the pandemic, but we gradually were able to open much of that back up and make it as safe as possible for people to participate and use these use playgrounds and all these facilities and the programs to have a better quality of life and to avoid isolation and the like. We haven't fully ramped back all of our rec programming yet. We have, but we have done a lot to alter the way we provide services and are trying to do that and changing that every day. So hopefully you're keeping on top of that and monitoring the new and different ways that we're providing programs. Obviously, events suffered a lot. We had to cancel a lot of events, as you well know. Certainly not something we wanted to do, but something that we needed to do for the safety of the community. Our events staff, I just, really want to thank them for the way that they've adapted to this situation and provided new and different kinds of events, like the drive-in theater. I mean, who would have thought we would have done a drive-in theater in the middle of Dublin, but it's wildly popular and it's a lot of fun and a lot of people are enjoying that. So actually, we've come across new programming that I think we'll probably do in an enduring way that you learn about in these kind of situations. So every once in a while, there's goodness on the other side of a crisis sometimes, and we're certainly doing everything to find that wherever we can. I want to thank Dublin City Council for, as the mayor mentioned in the video, the continuity of governance is really important, and they really availed themselves. And I want to thank them for their leadership for really working hard in a different way in this online format to continue to provide staff the guidance that we needed, to continue to govern the way that they needed to, and to govern through an emergency is not easy. I want to thank them for allowing me to exercise certain emergency authorities under these emergency conditions so that we could get some things done more efficiently, but certainly not getting out of bounds of my own authority as city manager, but as emergency manager coordinator to allow me to do some things that, move things a little bit more quickly than they might have otherwise moved along. So I thank them for that. And I do want to say, they've been chomping at the bit to get back in the council chambers and to get everybody back together. And I'm probably the bad guy by encouraging them not to do that yet. But just so you know, they really believe in that as I do, that the best way to do democracy is face to face. And it won't be long, and we'll be doing that. So I want to make sure to recognize them and thank them for all of that. So certainly, these virtual meetings are tough. We're all living by it these days. I know you all know that. In a lot of different ways, it's helped to make us more efficient. It's helped to make us even more accessible, but it's also hindered us in ways too. But I think we've been more efficient than not, and a lot of goodness has come out of it, and we've been able to, at the end of the day, really get the job done. One other area that's suffered a great deal is our hospitality industry, our restaurants. And so we've done a lot of work with the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau, now called Visit Dublin, Ohio. They've changed their name and their brand to try to help that industry along and provide additional resources that's going to help bring that industry back, so that we are, moving along very well on the back end of this pandemic. And there will be a back end of this, believe it or not, I believe someday. But we're working really hard so that when we do get to the back end of that, we're not, as I call it, coming out of the blocks sitting. We're going to come out of the blocks at a sprint and be ready to take advantage of the opportunities on the other end. Special thanks to all of our partners: Dublin City Schools, Centero, Dublin Arts Council, the Chamber of Commerce, Dublin Bridges, and all of the senior living facilities, all of the faith community, and I could go on and on and on with all the partners that we have in the community. And be honest with you, when you do day-to-day work outside of an emergency, you kind of take all of those partnerships for granted. Everyone's just doing their thing and getting their job done, and they're doing it well. But when an emergency like this hits, and you're all, in it together and coming together to manage through and respond to an emergency situation like this, it's been really great to watch everyone shine and to work together and work hard together. Speaking of partnerships, I really want to say thank you to the Franklin County Public Health Department. The Ohio Department of Health have been terrific to work with and very helpful. Franklin County Public Health, even though we are in 3 different counties here in Dublin, Franklin County Public Health is our designated health agency. We contract with them and have for many, many years to be our health department. And they've been terrific in helping us to navigate the safety requirements and the things that we need to support and educate on and help the public with to keep us all as safe as possible. We got into some areas that we didn't really think we would get into. We called it Dublin Cares. With all those partners that I mentioned, we were able to help our older population and our population who was struggling, some of whom were struggling because of the economic crisis, may have been out of a job or what have you, like partners like the Dublin Food Pantry and others that just really rose to the occasion to help the community, and people helping those agencies do their contributions, be they monetary or otherwise, to help those agencies perform at peak throughout this whole crisis. So, we want to make sure that we thank all of them. And of course, we had an economic crisis in addition to this pandemic crisis. And I'm pleased to say, really, overall, that the Dublin economy appears to be operating with a great deal of resiliency. Our revenues are at least flat to increased, despite some of the challenges in certain funds like the Hotel Motel Bed Tax Fund and the Recreation Fund, which certainly are hurting. But overall, I think what it reflects is that our economy, our microeconomy here in Dublin, is performing very well, is very resilient in times like this. And I think we'll endure the crisis pretty well. And I think we'll come out on the other end of it doing well also. I think that, we'll continue to work hard on this economic situation. We have not rested at all. We've been working very hard to make sure, again, that when we come out on the backside of this, we're on a sprint. And our economic development team and others, the Chamber of Commerce, Visit Dublin, Ohio, and others have worked very hard to ensure that we have a robust economy as possible, and planning for and developing the pipeline of opportunities, which, by the way, is operating. There are things in the pipeline that show promise into the future as well as growing what we have in our existing base. So a lot of good news there, more good news than bad. And we hope that it stays that way, although we know we've got quite a ways to go with this situation. Also, with the tragic death of George Floyd and others like Mr. Floyd, I want to thank our city council for responding to the protests that we had here in Dublin. I think I've said this before and I'll say it again. I have frankly never been so moved in my many years of public service by being engaged with and involved with the folks who were protesting here in Dublin. And those folks, by the way, were almost 90%, if I had to guess, 85 to 90% are youth who came out in support of each other and in support of diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. And it was just a real rewarding experience to have the opportunity to interact with them. And I want to thank our city council for passing resolution 37-20 and resolution 41-20, both of which made a statement about diversity, inclusion, equity, and social justice, and also established what is now the community task force, which are addressing those issues within the community, helping us as a city organization to reflect and think about the things that we can do better regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice, and also the establishment of our new Chiefs Advisory Committee, which is advising and serving as a sounding board to Chief Paise as we go through and again do an inward look at ourselves relative to policies and processes and the like. So much thanks to the leadership there and to all the folks who stepped up to volunteer to participate in those both the task force and the advisory committee. So with that, I think your city is performing well, if you don't mind me saying, and I know this isn't the state of the city, so I won't quite go there yet, but I feel really good about where we are. We've just come through a 5-year capital improvement program budget for the next 5 years looking out, and we're really not going to miss a beat. We've been able to execute on the 5-year capital program that council approved for this year. We did pump the brakes a little bit on that just to make sure that revenues were going to come in as we had hoped that they would, and they have or slightly exceeded that. So hopefully you've seen a lot of work going on in the community in regards to maintenance of streets and so forth. So we have not disinvested in the community, nor are we getting behind in maintenance and creating a hole that we would have to climb out of later. We're able to stay on top of it. Likewise with the operating budget, we did do some freezing with hiring, personnel costs. We pumped the brakes on about 20% of the operating budget just to make sure that we would get over the hump here with any financial challenges we might have. But also keep in mind that this city has traditionally done a great job of developing general fund reserves that would enable the city to, and we operate at about a 50% to 60%. Well, actually it's higher than that. I take that back. We've been at as high as 80, 90% reserves. And that's dropping a little bit because of some of the capital projects that we're undertaking, but we're hovering around 65% or so in reserves, and will about the same or slightly below that at the end of next year. But the point of that is we're way above what the requirement for reserves are for cities according to the Government Finance Officer Association and the standards that cities typically go by. But that is not, that's been the result of many, many years or decades of hard work, fiscal conservatism, and making sure that we had dollars like that set aside for this very reason. Should we get into a financial challenge or there be an economic crisis like this, it enables us to keep the machine, if you will, moving, keep us providing those essential services, keep us forward investing in the community so that we don't drop behind and become uncompetitive or lack services. So I feel really good about where we are for what that's worth, and looking forward to a brighter and a more hopeful 2021, that's for sure. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Chief Justin Paise, I think, who's going to talk to you next. Thank you again for being here with us tonight and for all that you do.
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, everyone. And as you've heard from both Sue and Dana and the mayor, 2020 has been a challenging year in a lot of ways. but in all challenges lie a certain degree of opportunity as well. So I'm very grateful for the technology for us to be able to connect and engage with our community members, our HOA leaders, and our neighborhood leaders tonight. And I want to thank our partners at Communications and Public Information and our IT department certainly for making this possible this evening. So just want to share some information that we think is important for our HOA leaders and our neighborhood leaders to have to share with their residents in their neighborhoods and with all of our community. So just as a reminder, our mission at the police department and our focus is protection, service, and public safety in partnership with members of our community. And how we do that and deliver that each and every year, we focus on very specific goals that are intended to contribute to us achieving that mission each and every year. And just as we get started, just want to make sure we highlight for everyone what those focuses are for our police department this year. Critical incident preparedness and response, theft defense reduction throughout the city, overall traffic safety improvement, and addressing issues of significant community concern. And again, all of these goals are intended for us to, again, achieve that mission of protection, service, and public safety for the city of Dublin. So we can move on to the next slide. So there are some highlights we want to make sure that we communicate tonight for members of our community, and we have shared information in other forums, but want to make sure we take the opportunity to, with clarity, share that information again here tonight. So our goal of critical incident response and preparedness, there are a couple of highlights we wanted to make sure we focused tonight and shared some information on. Certainly there's been some discussion about Dublin in the news over the last several weeks, and in particular, the FBI's investigation into the thwarted plot to kidnap the Michigan's governor. So we wanted to share some information. I just wanted to make sure if there are any questions that are still lingering in our community about Dublin's recognition as part of the documents that were released in the FBI's investigation. We wanted to share with some clarity what that means for our community members. The first thing I want to make sure we're clear on with everyone is that this was not a Dublin police investigation. This was an investigation led by the FBI's Detroit field office. So in that regard, any questions about specifics related to that investigation would need to be directed to the FBI Detroit field office for specific details. That being said, this was really excellent work on behalf of the FBI, and we were certainly glad to see that any attempt at harm anyone, certainly if we're able to prevent that and hold accountable those who were involved, we were very grateful to see the work done by the FBI. But there are some points of clarity we wanted to make sure we shared because as part of the indictments that were unsealed and released as part of the press information, Dublin was mentioned in those documents. So we wanted to, with clarity and working in partnership with our local FBI affiliates, make sure we understood what we can say without jeopardizing certainly an ongoing investigation, but to give our members of our community some sense of confidence that we are safe here and exactly why we know that. So one of the points of clarity is there was no indication at any point that there was a plan or threat involving the city of Dublin or our community. And rest assured that if there had been any indication that there was a threat to safety in our community, that the Dublin Police Department would have been informed and we would have been involved in that investigation. As it were, there were no indications of any threat to safety to our community. Another point of clarity, none of the individuals involved in the plot against the Michigan governor are from Dublin or have ties to the city of Dublin. No one from Dublin or the Columbus area organized the meeting, and no one from Dublin attended the meeting. I think it's very important that we're clear on that. And then the meeting location in Dublin, the reference in the documents and in the press release that from the FBI were actually the location that was in the Dublin area was chosen really just out of convenience for traveling for the people who attended that meeting. There was no indication that there was any other specific reason for that meeting to have occurred in the Dublin area other than it was a location chosen because of common traveling distance. And then finally, as clarity, the news sometimes lists events that have occurred in Dublin that do not in fact happen within the confines or borders of the city of Dublin. So in this particular incident, one of the things that's important to be very clear on is that the meeting occurred at a Columbus hotel with a Dublin mailing address. So I just wanted to be clear on those things. There was never a threat to the city of Dublin. Otherwise, we would have been involved or informed. There was nobody from or affiliated with Dublin involved in the meeting. It was chosen as a location in this area because of traveling distance for the people who attended that meeting, but it actually did not, in fact, occur in the city of Dublin. So those things we wanted to make sure we shared. But I also understand that the question is not just what I answered. It is also, how do we have a sense of safety? How do we have a sense that we know all of the things we need to continue the safety and protection of the city? So I want to make everyone aware that the Dublin Police Department takes every potential threat against safety in our city seriously and investigates all of those threats thoroughly. We have an excellent working relationship and partnership with our local FBI affiliates and the members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force here in the Columbus area, as well as with state intelligence resources and local law enforcement networks. Our crime analyst is regularly in contact and communicates with our intelligence partners at the statewide Terrorism Analysis and Crime Center, and we constantly monitor for potential threats in the central Ohio area, constantly looking for any that may have impact or may impact the safety in Dublin. And finally, just as clarity on this particular issue and for assurance for the safety of all the members of our community, I just want to make very clear, we do not tolerate extremist ideologies that threaten the safety of our community. The Dublin Police Department can't answer specific questions about this threat, but we want to reassure the public that the Dublin Police Department takes all threats seriously. We investigate them all thoroughly, and we remain vigilant and committed in our effort to ensure public safety for all of our community members. So I just wanted to make sure in this venue as well with our HOA leaders and with our neighborhood leaders that we provided that information again, just to make sure everybody had the information that they needed again for that sense of safety and security. We also know that we have a very important election right around the corner, Tuesday, November 3rd. And with each election, and all of them are always important, we also know that it brings a certain amount of anxiety for everyone about what that means for as well, in particular at our polling locations. So we wanted to make sure that we gave some assurance that we do have a plan for staffing for our police department, and we have communicated that plan with Washington Township Fire Department as our partners in public safety. As you may be aware, there are 17 polling locations within the city of Dublin. We have reached out to the school, and the school is not in session that day, although there will be staff members at the school during those days. But what we have done is we have increased our staffing levels on election day and the day after the election. We want to make sure that you know that we have continued to communicate with all of the resources that I mentioned earlier. And right now there are there's no information giving any indication of a credible threat to the city of Dublin or our polling locations, but we continue to contact and stay in connection with our partners at Franklin County Emergency Management and Homeland Security and with the Homeland Security Information Network that they have established leading up to the election and through the election. So we wanted to make sure, again, that we answered that question that we have heard from some community members about what our plans may be to make sure that Dublin remains safe during and after the election. So thank you. Next slide. So again, one of our goals each and every year is focusing on crime and how we can reduce crime in the city of Dublin. This information that you see on the screen is very consistent with what we have presented in the past. The crimes that we focus on primarily, because they are the most reported to our department each and every year, are those offenses that involve theft. In particular, theft from vehicle, and then burglary and breaking and entering offenses are offenses that we track to make sure that we are paying attention to the number of occasions those are occurring within our community. With good fortune and with a lot of great work and partnership with our community and a lot of fantastic effort on the part of our officers and other members of public safety in the central Ohio area, what we have seen this year is we continue to see a downward trend of those offenses. Very specifically, though, one of the highlights we wanted to make sure we communicated with HOA leaders, and we would ask you to pass on to those members of the community that you represent as well. There are some very specific types of offenses that we've been paying attention to this year and would ask for your help and assistance in, again, continuing to reduce the number of occasions we see these offenses occur. So two of the highlights that we wanted to make sure we brought forward this year as part of the discussion is so far in this year, we've had 33 vehicles that have been stolen in the city of Dublin, which to us was something that certainly we wanted to make sure we continue to pay attention to. That is more. Any amount of vehicles that are stolen is too many for us. We take all crime personally. In particular, with this type of offense, one of the things we wanted to highlight, though, is the majority of those offenses that we take a report for, the keys were left in the vehicle and or a fob was left in the vehicle. So the highlight for this focus and the way that the HOA leaders and the members of the community can help us is in just remembering, in particular, when you have a car that has a fob, that you remove that from the vehicle. And certainly we're all guilty of sometimes moving quickly and forgetting things in the vehicle. In particular, if the key is with the vehicle, or if that fob is with the vehicle, what we have found is that the reports we are taking for stolen vehicles, that's typically the majority of those reports. So if we can just remove the keys, certainly we'd see less of those offenses. The other highlight is something that we've looked back actually over the last 5 years, and it isn't as frequent as some of the other offenses that we have reported to us, but I wanted to take the opportunity to really emphasize this is something that we would hope everyone takes seriously and can take some opportunity for us, again, to reduce the number of occurrences, but also the potential threat to our community through these offenses. One of the items that is occasionally stolen out of a vehicle are firearms. And over the last 5 years, we have 27 reports of theft from vehicle where a gun was taken from a vehicle. And for us, obviously, these are threats out to our community when a firearm is stolen. They're also a potential threat to our officers who are out in these areas trying to prevent and keep the community safe. So what we would ask is that if you own a firearm and you plan to carry it or transport it in your vehicle, first and foremost, do it legally, do it safely. But the highlight is, please do not leave a firearm unattended or unsecured in your vehicle or in your home, frankly. If you keep those secure and secure those for the safety of everyone in our community. So those were the highlights really from our crime update this year. And then the last slide, as the city manager mentioned, I want to thank City Council and the city manager for their work and effort in responding to our community. And what I want to say to our community is that, again, as the city manager mentioned, we're just so moved to see our community come together to passionately advocate for the progression and development and evolution of our community and inclusivity within our community. So Resolution 4120 was enacted by City Council earlier this year, in a resolution establishing a community task force and Chiefs Advisory Committee to assist on advising and combating prohibiting social injustice, inequity, intolerance, negative stereotype, and discrimination. And again, I want to applaud City Council and the City Manager for taking the initiative to enact these two groups for us to continue the conversations that began over the summer, as the City Manager mentioned, during protests in our city. So I just wanted to highlight for the members of the HOA, those who were appointed to the Chiefs Advisory Committee and who have met with us on a couple of occasions so far this year: Judge Dwayne Maynard, Ajmeri Hawk, Srikanth Gadam, Cameron Justice, Yan Ling Yin, Susan Ortega, Imran Malik, Courtney Ingram, Isao Soji, and Stella Vialba. And so we have had just 2 meetings so far, but they've been very good interactive dialogue with the members of the Chiefs Advisory Committee. We met the first time in September 15th, and then just recently a couple of weeks ago on October 13th to begin having conversations with this community group. And our hope is to continue to partner on, again, all the issues that we need to hear from our community and all the things we would like to share with our community about our police department. Again, our goal is our mission is protection, service, and public safety in partnership with our community. One of our focuses is addressing issues of significant community concern, and I would offer for all the members of the advisory committee and all the members of our department, this is exactly answering that calling, is addressing issues of significant community concern in a positive way and in partnership with our community members. So thank you again for letting me have a few minutes to bring an update to you on our police services in the community, and I look forward to answering any questions at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Chief. We now have Brent Crawford from Crawford Hoying. Brent? Brent, are you ready to unmute?
All right, let's start this again then. Sorry about that. Yeah. So anyway, thanks to to City Council and staff and the homeowners associations for giving us the time to talk today. It's much appreciated. We always like to talk about Bridge Park, so glad for any opportunity to do that. So we're asked to give an update on Block D, North Market, and COVID-19, and sort of how the impacts might have had on Bridge Park and what we've done about it. So just want to give you an update on that. So the COVID-19's had impacts each segment differently. So not everybody's felt the same pain. And so if you think about it both from an industry perspective and also individually the types of business within Bridge Park. So as you can imagine, hotels have been the most impacted of really all the segments, followed relatively closely by retail and restaurant. We were very proud of the AC Marriott here in Dublin, which last count, I think when we checked back in February, we were the number one. We were two, and I think we moved up to the number one AC Marriott in North America in terms of performance. So it was doing incredibly well. And so it was obviously tough and painful for when COVID struck, and we essentially went from over 90% occupancy or around 90% occupancy on an average down to less than 5% for an extended period of time. That lasted for about 60 days, in which we were there. We were thought about closing, as many hotels did, just from an operational cost perspective to keep the doors open, but we did want to continue to provide the service. We were having some first responders stay there, and it just made sense for us to stay open. And at the end of the day, we're glad we did. We're proud to say that it's bounced back relatively strongly, certainly compared to the market. So we're now averaging about 60% occupancy, which is well above the national average for occupancy for hotels. And we attribute it to a couple things. One, that it's become a little bit of a staycation location. Certainly, we still do get business travel, whereas before it was essentially 100% occupied during the week, and then we would fall off maybe into the 80s and 90s on the weekends. It's now the opposite. We're typically running in the high 90s on the weekends, Friday, Saturday night, in which we're bringing people from around Central Ohio and surrounding areas who view it as a chance to get away without maybe traveling out of state. So we're very proud of where it stands now, and it's done relatively well considering the circumstances. As you can imagine as well, on restaurants and retail, they've been impacted pretty hard, but not all the same. As an example would be Local Cantina and Condado performed very well through this. And in fact, Condado and Local Cantina, I believe, had their highest or their best quarters ever since being open in the third quarter, really just from the takeout market and then their fast casual style. So they've done extremely well. So we talked to a lot of restaurateurs from around the city, the state, and beyond. We're fortunate or unfortunate in this case to have bars and restaurant interest in other parts of both the state, the city, and around the country. And one of the questions presented to us is, how does Bridge Park fare, or has it fared compared to maybe the short north or downtown or Easton? And having interest in most of those locations in those areas, we know that Bridge Park really is performing better than any of those locations. That's been verified by other people who have restaurants here in Bridge Park and also in those other markets. So Cameron Mitchell would be one who told me last week that this is the best performing set of restaurants he has in North America, except for one location. So from a cost per square foot perspective, they're performing, again, very well. Maybe not what they were right pre-COVID, although some of them are. And I will say this, we have some restaurants that are doing pre-COVID numbers. And I'll give a shout out and a thanks to City Council and staff for allowing the expanded patios on both sides. Certainly the street closure has been just an incredible hit among patrons. We just get repeated comments about how amazing the experience is, and it's their favorite place to be. And it's really allowed the restaurants to fill those missing tables that they would have had inside otherwise. So everyone's generally hanging in there. We had a couple lost tenants through this on the retail side. We envision that's probably the only fatalities from the situation, though we already have people backfilling those particular spaces. Office tenants have been generally not impacted at all here at Bridge Park. We have really good office tenants, both local and national tenants, who will continue to able to operate, if not directly in their office space at home, and their businesses, really continue to flourish. So we've seen virtually no impact there. Because of the overall situation and some of the tenants, mainly again the first floor tenants being unable to pay rent, we did provide benefit to the tenants. That's money we essentially gave to them of over $1 million to help them get through the situation, and they were most appreciative. We've developed great relationships through this. with them. They understand we have their back, and it's been really a positive experience, and really diving deep with them and understand how to help them get through. And again, the city working with us and with the tenants to allow for the additional dining is done wonders for them. So much appreciated there. Talk a little bit about D Block and how that's performing. As some of you may know, some of the first phases of D Block have opened. We have residential tenants moving in here very regularly, and we're already leased to 70% in that next block, which is a pretty incredible feat really through the pandemic. There's a few reasons for it. One, we did build a pool in this second phase, which has been extremely popular, but we're also seeing a lot of movement from other parts of the market, specifically downtown market. So the short north downtown, we're getting a lot of residents moving out here who are looking for the urban experience, and maybe without, frankly, or unfortunately, some of the headaches that are occurring in the downtown markets right now. And so we've picked up a lot there. So we're leasing at a very quick pace, certainly much quicker than what our original estimates would have been. Hagerty Insurance will be a great addition to the market, coming in from Michigan. They're moving in to D Block as well, and they should be in end of the year, early next year, slightly delayed because of COVID, but otherwise excited to be in the space. And they'll be provided tremendous lift again to all the restaurants and dining locations, just simply because of the number of bodies that'll be in there on a daily basis. So we're very excited to have them. And I wouldn't say ironically, but when I talk to some of my friends in the business who own developments in other locations, they're not necessarily seeing the same sort of interest that we're seeing here at Bridge Park. And I think it's a tribute to the overall environment that we have here within Dublin and Bridge Park. The park system that's being built, the bridge has obviously been an incredible hit. And so office tenants still continue to call. While again, it is a little bit slower pace than what it was. People are a little on hold both between COVID and the election, but we're still getting a lot of interest. We do have 2 new restaurants that have already signed leases and are in design now within D Block. One, we're very excited. It's a breakfast location, which people have been clamoring for a very long time, and we cannot wait to announce that. And that'll be over the coming couple months. They'll announce they're in final design now. And then in another new restaurant that's a new addition to the market, there's one other one in Columbus, but again, like we try to do it as best we can as a chef-driven restaurant or restaurant operators, meaning they're professionals at what they do and understand how to run a restaurant business. So we're excited about that. And then there's a third new restaurant coming to the corner of Bridge Park Avenue and Riverside Drive, sort of the opposite corner of Hen Quarter. We've been saving that space, waiting for the right opportunity, and we've found that. And so that'll get announced here later this year and hopefully open sometime early next summer. Really should be an incredible fit for Bridge Park. So that's all going really well. We've sold 26 of the 43 condominiums in D Block. Again, ahead of pace, doing really well, all above the original estimates for budget. We've been selling roughly here recently 1 or 2 per week, so it's picked up nicely, done very well. Again, we've a lot of Dublin residents who've sold their homes and want to stay in Dublin. We've also picked up a lot of people coming from the short north downtown markets who enjoy the energy and vibrancy of a dense mixed use area like what we have here, and again, looking for maybe a little different experience than what they're currently having downtown. So we expect to be fully sold out in those by early spring, early summer, if not sooner, hopefully, but it's gone very, very well. North Market is nearing its opening date here in the next few weeks, and there are 21 total spaces there, and we have 18 signed leases there. We did have 21, but as you can imagine with COVID, it did cause some people to drop off in the short term as they sort of reevaluate their existing businesses, either at the existing North Market or other locations, and trying to evaluate sort of their next steps. But we have so much interest in that, so that's really just a given. As a matter of at what time we can be picky. We had originally, I believe, we had around 90 applications for the 21 locations, so we were able to really pick in what we thought were the best for the market, and that is continuing on now. So we're having discussions with a lot of different groups, but really trying to fit all the different niches while at the same time wanting to ensure that they'll be successful once they get open. Once we do get open, it'll open at a different sort of scale and pace than maybe we originally anticipated due to COVID, which is it's going to open with 3 or 4 tenants, which I think is not a bad thing to do right now from a volume perspective in the space. And then over the coming months, really by the end of January, most all of the tenants, the 18 tenants should be open and operating. And then, we do expect that we'll sign the remaining leases between now and then. So the hope being is that by early spring next summer, things have eased a bit and we're in a better position than we are today from COVID, and it'll be an extremely vibrant space. But I can tell you from our position, the amount of feedback we get relative to people wanting the North Market, and excited about the North Market. Is really almost second to none of anything that we've done here. So we're excited to see it. I know the tenants that have signed there are very excited to get open for sure. I know another question we had was regarding the former Wendy's site in the corner, and just since I won't be here at the end for additional questions, wanted to answer that one, which I'll give a vague answer, which is we don't know yet. You know, we've been looking at a number of different opportunities there. Certainly, we've not discussed at length with the city and their involvement and approval and so forth of what we would like to do there. We do envision a building of similar height to what the AC Marriott is to mirror that corner, and we have a lot of interest, whether it be corporate office or condominiums. There's a lot of interested parties there, but we're taking our time right now just to evaluate what is the best option to put there. It's an important and corner for us, for Bridge Park, for the city of Dublin, and everybody involved. So we want to make sure we do it and do it right. And so we'll we're really evaluating that at this point. I think that's the gist. We're happy, we're pleased considering the circumstances at Bridge Park. Our tenants are commercial tenants, restaurant tenants, for the most part, are extremely happy. They perform well. They appreciate the support. Again, the streets being open or closed, excuse me, for dining was a huge help. And so we want to continue to support them as best we can. And I know the city will do the same.
Thank you, Brent. And I know you have to hop off and you won't be here for the Q&A session. But if we get questions, we will make sure we get them to you and we can get answers to our HOA leaders.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you being here tonight. And now let's turn it over to Matt Ehrman, our Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to give you a brief update on a few of the projects we have going on in Parks and Recreation. First slide, Bruce, please. Talk a little bit about Riverside Crossing Park. We're currently finishing out the upper brick paver plaza with the restroom, pavilion, lower seat plazas, wall bases, and waterfall features. There's been a lot of activity, as you've probably seen out there. If you've been on the site recently, you'll notice that the temporary path connection from Riverside Drive to the bridge has been relocated to the upper plaza. That will continue to be widened as construction allows. The waterfall fountain walls are being built in the lower plaza, and some of the stone veneers being installed on the exterior walls of the upper plaza. So there is a lot of work to be completed before the winter weather slows down the outside progress. However, the project is currently on schedule and is anticipated completion of these phases to be late fall next year. Next slide, please. Brandon Park Pond. Many people aren't aware of this project, but this project completely renovated the old pond in Brandon subdivision. This pond had filled in with silt and debris over the years and began to choke itself out, creating an unhealthy ecosystem. And last year, we had about 60 volunteers who assisted staff and the contractors to save and relocate thousands of small aquatic life from the pond. Since then, the pond has been excavated to expand by way of footprint and depth and provide optimal conditions for aquatic life. The next phases include a replanting of the area beginning in October 31st, actually, with what we're calling the Twig or Treat Volunteer Planting Event. Also, a secondary seed mix will be broadcast to provide a natural understory to support the wildlife and vegetation succession. Once the pond has had a chance to fill in with rain and snow over the next few months, aquatic plantings will be added. The pond looks a little rough as it heals, and it'll take a little bit of time to recover, but over the next year or so, the ecosystem will improve for many years to come. Next slide, please. The Dublin Community Pool North project. This was one that involved much community input and anticipation of the renovation of the North Pool. The building foundations and walls for the new buildings have begun, and we're almost finishing up the pool walls on both of the lap and leisure pools at this point. Over the next couple of weeks, more and more of the buildings will become visible and the scale of the new pool complex will be apparent. Next slide. I think we have 2 slides here, Bruce, if you don't mind. So this project is currently on schedule as well, and it is set to be completed before Memorial Day 2021. Next slide, please. South High Street trees, you will have noticed several trees were removed from this area last year. Many of the street trees along the street were subject to AUP's pruning requirements from the overhead power line interference. So when we assessed the condition of the trees, many were not healthy enough to survive the extensive pruning. So we had to remove several of those trees. So since then, City Council has reviewed a variety of options to reclaim the treescape on both sides of the street in phases as the remaining trees need to be removed. The eventual streetscape will ultimately be uniform and have a more symmetrical look and feel. To accomplish this, though, it requires a fairly extensive structural system actually underneath the roadway to allow for appropriate soil volumes to support the tree growth. Certain areas on the west side of the street, the new tree sites will be excavated down to the street level, which will require stabilization of the soil and a sidewalk behind those trees. And in doing so, the Architectural Review Board is scheduled to review some of these options in November for these retaining walls to ensure they're appropriate for the historic district landscape. Another big component of this project is to relocate the overhead utility lines to clean up the street and offer room for the larger trees to grow to the desired height. Next slide, please. As far as our community events go, our team has been working hard throughout the year and reimagining events under the new pandemic precautions. With that, just a reminder, Halloween Spooktacular starts this evening and will run through Saturday the 31st. As expected, it will look a little different than in years past. You can register in advance to walk the haunted trail or watch the not so spooky drive-in movie. Several of the activities of Kaufman Park are there for residents to explore at their leisure from now through Halloween. These experiences include a pumpkin sign hunt, storybook walk, and a hay maze. Staff has also worked hard to provide experience digitally, including multiple online contests and other fun activities that can be found on the city's website. For Veterans Day this year, we are planning to honor those who served our nation with virtual Veterans Day ceremony video that will be released on the city's website and social media on November 11th at 11 a.m. We will also have a new film tour of the Grounds of Remembrance in Dublin's Veterans Park. Plus, the Abbey Theatre of Dublin will present We Serve, which is a play written by veterans and performed by veterans. To round out the year, the Christmas tree lighting ceremony is currently being reimagined. We have been in contact with the big guy up at the North Pole, who is seemingly weathering the pandemic just fine. So we anticipate he will honor us with another visit to Dublin this year. We will provide more details on our website and social media, so stay tuned for that. For all the information you want on all of our events, please check out the city's website for details and updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Megan O'Callahan, our Deputy City Manager and Chief Operating Officer.
Good evening, everyone. With the leaves falling, and they're falling fast, and the weather turning colder, it's a great time to talk about some of our city services and also to share some reminders that we think are important and that we're hoping that you can share with your neighbors. So you're likely familiar with our Go Dublin app that residents can use to request a city service or report an issue. And I wanted to start by plugging the app because we think it's really an efficient tool for residents to reach out to city staff and also to track progress on requests. It also has lots of efficiencies on the city's end. The app uses GPS technology, so you can easily report the location, attach a photo, and provide some comments about the request or inquiry. So I'd ask that you please encourage your neighbors to use the app as much as possible. As Dana and others have reiterated, all the staff has been working very hard to continue city services uninterrupted throughout this pandemic situation. One example, our on-demand curbside chipper program is an example of a popular service that is typically requested via Go Dublin. Pre-COVID-19, we were known for providing this service sometimes the same day or within a couple of days, our goal being within 7 days, and that's what we communicate as the service goal to the public. It's interesting, the demand for this service has increased significantly during the pandemic with more residents spending more time at home. We've already exceeded 5,000 chipper requests this year thus far, and that is in comparison to 4,001 at the same point in 2019. So the service may be taking us a little bit longer to provide. We appreciate residents' patience. We've done what we can to shift our resources around, and the good news is that we have been able to continue to meet our service delivery goal of 7 days. So I just wanted to share some of the impacts on our operations that we've been experienced through the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our weekly yard waste, trash, and recycling services. Our provider is Rumpke, and our staff works very closely with Rumpke staff each week, and also with Swaco staff, and we stay in touch with other communities in the region as well that use Rumpke. Since the onset of the pandemic, again, you may have noticed your collection occurring later in the day than you're accustomed to seeing, and maybe a few times it's been the next morning. And this is once again largely due to the shift in demand due to those working remotely from their homes, and that has meant a significant increase in volumes collected each week, and that's been to a tune of 25 to 30% increase in volumes. What that means is more volumes means more trucks fill up faster and more trips need to be made to unload, and that all takes time, which has negatively impacted Rumpke's collection schedules. And this isn't something that just Dublin has been seeing. This is something that other communities that Rumpke's been serving and other hauling providers have been experiencing. Rumpke and the other hauling providers, Swaco, we've all been in contact and they have taken steps to mitigate the impacts. We've worked closely with them to ramp up communication efforts to educate residents about the situation, also to notify residents of any resultant delays in service. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that for your awareness. And all in all, I think Rumpke has done a good job. They've stepped up to the challenge during this time and managed a very tough situation. And we'd also like to thank our residents for understanding and patience, because you may have seen a little bit of a change. We're in our third week of curbside leaf collection, and we're back in collection area 1 for the second time, and that area is generally west of 270 south of Brand. The 2020 leaf collection service is scheduled to continue through December 18th. Our leaf collections take place on a bi-weekly schedule, so please check our website for the map. And as a reminder, please try to have your leaves to the curb by 7 a.m. the Monday of each pickup week, because we can't be quite sure which day of the week we're going to be servicing your residents. So it's important that they be at the curb by 7 so that they don't get missed. Collections typically will take the entire week, especially during this time when the leaves are falling, and they're falling so fast, our volumes are higher. So our progress is a little, it is on schedule, and it does take the entire week. The other thing, please help us remind your neighbors to rake them right. Rake your leaves by the street, not in the street. These pictures on the previous slide were good examples of good raking practices. Speaking of machines, since last fall, we were fortunate to be able to purchase 2 new leaf machines. They're a new style, they're more compact, they're operated by remote control. Our staff's pretty excited about them as they're smaller. They'll be very helpful and more efficient in our smaller courts and cul-de-sacs. And the remote control feature will enable our crews to work more efficiently and stay safer. So if you happen to see those out, now you know a little bit about them, so check them out. We're also always looking for ways to improve our processes and our customer service. So if you're familiar with our SnowGo system that tracks our progress with snow and ice during the winter, we've also added a similar feature to our LeafGo website this year. So as the crews complete collection on streets, those completed streets will change to the color green. The snapshot on this screen was from this morning, so you can see the streets that were completed yesterday in the service area. So hopefully the residents find this new and improved tool helpful, and we're always looking to improve those tools. Again, leaf collection scheduled to continue through December 18th or until the weather shifts. Sometimes the snow gets here first and we end up having to quickly pivot our operations over to snow operations. The leaves will freeze in piles on the street, and we'll manage that overlap in service as best we can. So that takes me to snow. Although many of us may not be ready to see the snow fall, I just want everybody to be rest assured that our staff has been preparing for whatever winter will bring us. We've had a full day of classroom and on-the-road training. Our crews have familiarized themselves with their routes. Snow-Go system was tested. All our equipment's been checked. Barns are full of salt. We have all our sources lined up for salt. As we do every year, streets will be serviced according to our priority system, which is outlined on our website. So please drive with caution when snow events occur, and feel free to check out Snow-Go to check our progress and see when your street was last serviced. That takes me to a new pilot composting program that we recently kicked off with the help of a SWACO community waste reduction grant. That pilot program is intended to make it convenient for residents to compost food scraps, yard waste, and other natural materials. The program is not a curbside collection program, but it is offered free of charge, and the disposal site is located at the service center on Shire Rings Road. We have complimentary composting buckets for those who register for the service on our website, and those buckets can be picked up at the service center. However, any bucket can be used for collecting compost, and you just bring that bucket of compost over to the service center and dispose of it, and it's open to all Dublin residents. So that's a nice new pilot program, and it's been super successful thus far. So I'm going to shift from services to touch on some of the highlights from construction season. Our annual street maintenance program is wrapping up, and we're able to improve dozens of roads throughout the city. That work primarily involved paving and curb and gutter replacement. A list of the streets that are on our radar for resurfacing in the next 5 years can be found on our website if you're interested in knowing that information. So feel free to check that out or reach out to city staff either via Go Dublin or an email, and we'd be happy to let you know our plans. We also completed the Bright Road Cul-De-Sac this year. So this is a reminder, please don't try to turn onto Bright Road from Riverside Drive. We've seen some people continue attempting that move, and they will end up in the ditch. So we've planted some landscaping, and we're doing the best we can to monitor that situation there, but just wanted to share that as a reminder and let everybody know that that cul-de-sac work has been completed. Cosgrade ditch stream relocation. If you've been over in the area of the service center recently, you've seen a lot of construction activity between Shire Rings and 33. We've been working to relocate the Cosgrade ditch or stream, and that work is necessary to accommodate the construction of a new road named University Boulevard. The Ohio State University has also started construction on their ambulatory care medical facility scheduled to open in 2022. Along the north side of University Boulevard, and we plan to bid the University Boulevard construction project early next year, and then that will take a couple of years to build. So you're going to see a lot of construction activity over in the area of the service center, so feel free to watch that progress. Construction of a new shared use path connection along Glick Road between Carnegie and Meerkirk will begin this week. We're hopeful that the paving work will be completed yet this year, weather permitting. And there's also a pedestrian bridge that needs to be fabricated as part of that project, and that'll take some time to receive that to the project and get that installed. So that work will carry over the winter and into the spring. And in the spring, that full path connection will be complete. This has been planned for a number of years, and I know there are residents out there who will be happy to see construction progress on that improvement. And then finally, last but not least, if you've been by the new City Hall, You've seen the progress on construction of the new City Hall Council Chamber addition. Construction on that addition will continue through the winter, and we anticipate wrapping that up next June of 2021. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And that completes our formal presentations tonight. So I want to thank all the speakers for giving those great updates. And so now we're going to open it up to the Q&A session. And we have our speakers available to address questions. Obviously, our city manager, Dana Mcdaniel, and then we've got other members of our leadership team and management team who are on this WebEx call, who are also available to answer questions. So if you want to ask a question, you see the dialogue or the little Q&A dialogue box at the very bottom on the right-hand side of your screen. If you just type the question mark, I will call out your name and allow you to ask that question live in person. And I will call out Bill Sluka. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. And we will unmute your mic because I believe you have a question to ask.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead,
me?
Bill.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I used to actually work in Dublin at a company, office building, retired recently this year, but the talk there, we had a presence of about 200 people in an office, and there was discussion of, are they really going to return back to working in the office versus, hey, this working from home thing, seems to work okay, and they don't have the expense then of maintaining the offices. So my question is, with the large number of office space we have in Dublin, what are our thoughts about, we see a lot of vacancies coming up, and what is the potential impact on tax revenue? What are we thinking about regarding that?
Thanks, Bill. I'll do my best to tackle that one. That's a crystal ball we don't have, but actually our vacancy rate is dropping from about 15% down to 12% will be the new report that we'll see coming out in this next quarter, where we've had quite a bit of office space absorption. And some of that even occurred after and in the midst of the pandemic. Certainly, businesses are going to reevaluate, their future and the future of the office space. So I think that's yet to be seen. There is a lot of talk about a lot of people changing that. I want to give our city council credit in their strategic planning and in their retreat. Actually, it's been probably a year, actually more than a year ago, when they established one of our strategic goals to be the most connected city. And one of the reasons they did that is we were anticipating a change in the future of work, meaning that we need more internet connectivity, faster speeds, higher capacities out into our neighborhoods and so forth for the value of our homes, but also to accommodate the future of work. Well, guess what? That happened 7 months ago. We thought it would be about 5 years from now. So here we are, trying to play catch up and get out ahead with that goal. So, certainly that poses a threat to the city relative to its revenues. As I mentioned, we're so far so good. We're staying fairly resilient, but we're going to have to watch it very closely. We proposed really a very flat operating budget for next year so that we can continue to keep an eye on it and see how this unfolds. We're not, I don't in any way want to come across overly optimistic that we're not going to see some change or some impact, and we're trying to plan accordingly with that. So, I wish I had the crystal ball on what that's going to mean. I think we'll see some change. Therefore, the things that we're doing relative to our capital budget and forward investing in infrastructure and internet, we don't do internet services, but critical infrastructure like fiber optics and the like are the things that we need to be doing to keep our office space that we do have competitive, and to try to be best postured to, attract those kind of opportunities when they do become available. But no doubt, it was competitive before. It's going to be a lot more competitive going forward.
Thank you, Dana. I think we have a question that is directed to Megan. Megan, do you want to read the question?
Well, I think that the inquiry has been resolved by
Okay.
the
All
person
right.
asking the question.
All right, perfect. I'm not seeing any other questions right now. If you have a question, please type your name in the Q&A box and we will unmute your mic so you are able to ask the question. No questions? You're letting everyone get off too easy. Come on. Is there a Tara that has a question?
Hi, this is Tara Amundsen from the River Forest neighborhood. Our neighborhood is interested in hosting Trick or Treat this week and just wondered if you had any recommendations or advice on precautions that we should be taking.
Sure. You know what? I can answer that question. Let me turn my video on. Appreciate that question. And you can imagine we're already getting questions on trick or treat night, Thursday night, with the weather forecast being rainy and windy, which this happens a lot. It has happened a lot in the past. And just so you know, we do follow the guidelines and the recommended date from the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. They set a unified date for the municipalities in the region. And we are also following the guidelines from Franklin County Public Health. And all of those are on our website. So they have really provided some nice guidelines in terms of how to keep your children safe, how to keep yourself safe if you are passing out candy. And then we're also have a lot of safety guidelines from our Dublin police that we issue every year as well in terms of walking and wearing reflective clothing and whatnot. And Chief, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything more to that.
No, so I think you covered it. I mean, the tips that we provided, Communications and Public Information does a great job of putting information out every year on tips for safety for Halloween and for trick or treat. If you go to the city's website, the newsroom, I can go down through the list here for everyone, but certainly, making sure that, kids are with a trusted adult and that we are wearing reflective clothing so that they're visible when they're out and about. This year in particular, making sure that everybody is wearing a protective face covering as we're visiting houses during this time and making sure we're preventing the spread of the disease and making sure that we're keeping as safe as we possibly can. Carrying a flashlight, carrying a cell phone, making sure that all those safety precautions that are normal each and every year are followed again this year, so everybody has a safe and enjoyable holiday. But I think it's best to, so we don't miss anything, just make sure we provide that information out to all of the HOA as well so that they can go and review those safety tips as well. And again, certainly we're hopeful everybody has a safe and enjoyable holiday.
Thank you, Chief. All right, I believe we have a question from Josh Betts. Josh, we will unmute your mic.
Hey, Sue, I think my question originally was for Megan regarding the Go Dublin app.
Okay, perfect.
But it's been resolved.
All right.
My ignorance was the problem.
Fantastic. No worries. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Ray Cully.
So if I could chime in, because the issue that Josh ran into, I think others could benefit from how he resolved it. We do on occasion get reports from residents receiving an error message when they use the Go Dublin app. And the first step that we recommend in resolving that is to delete the app from your phone and reinstall the app, or check and see if there's an updated version of the app to load. So in this instance, it sounded like that worked for Josh, which is great. But that's the first step that we ask residents to take to remedy that. And if that doesn't work and you're still receiving an error message or having an issue with the app, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we can assist you with getting it working.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. I believe Brian Griffith. Hi, Brian. Has a question, and Bruce will unmute your mic.
So I unmuted his mic. I don't know if he's there.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's see.
So his question is posted if you'd like for me to take it, or I can respond to him directly on another time.
Go ahead, Matt, and take it.
Oh, his question is, can we get a basketball court on the east side of the river? And I'll just quickly answer the question. It's all about site and location and where we might be able to find room for a basketball court. As with most or some park amenities, lights and certain demographics and foul language associated with certain activities doesn't mix well with, I'll say, playgrounds and close proximity to houses in most cases, which is one of the reasons we moved to the ones in Kaufman Park. But, you know, we explored the idea of using Emerald Fields as an option a couple of years ago, and some of the feedback we received was the proximity to the playgrounds would be an issue there as well. So we'll continue to look for those sites and see if there's a way we can put facilities out on the east side of the river, but you know, we'll keep searching.
Thank you, Matt. Bob Fathman, I believe you have a question?
Can you hear me now? Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
Picking up on the first question that was asked, I was wondering, do we have any mechanism, is there one even possible, for capturing the tax revenue from people who are working at home during COVID? Let's say if normally you work downtown at an office building downtown Columbus, but 80% of your time, or 90 or 70, has been working out of your home for like these 8 months of COVID. Does 80% of your income tax belong here versus to the city of Columbus? And if so, is there any way we know that and can ask for that?
Thanks for that question.
Or Dana?
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I've got it. Thanks for that question, Bob. That's a good question. It's really something we're wrestling with as municipalities in general who rely heavily on the income tax and the pay where you work rule with that. As you may know, with the state emergency declaration, it's required, what's called the 20-day rule was suspended and requiring that people pay where you work as part of that in conjunction with the emergency declaration plus 10 days, I believe is how it's written. There's been some challenges to that. There's a legal challenge to that, which City of Columbus has taken up the fight against. There is legislation that's been attempted to be introduced at the State House to sort of shore that up. I will tell you we're opposed to that as a city because if the 20-day rule were to go away, I think local governments are going to have to reinvent themselves as they know themselves today. It is a significant threat across the board to many municipalities, and there's a lot of concern about that. So right now, you know, our goal, frankly, is to try to keep the 20-day rule in place, and hopefully don't have to extend the emergency declaration. But if the emergency declaration were to be extended, we're hoping that rule is extended with it. Now, I also would add that the 20-day rule was put into implementation by the governor along with his declaration, really at the request of the Ohio Chamber. The Ohio Chamber was heavily involved in that because of the logistics. Companies were going to the Ohio Chamber and saying, look, it's going to be almost impossible for many companies to be able to, you know, pay where people live as opposed to where they work. And it was going to be a big challenge for companies to do that as well. So, you know, it's not just a municipal initiative. It was more so initiated by business itself. So, you know, we're going to take up that issue as well as a municipality because it's going to be very disruptive to local government as we know today. And I guess what I would tell you is I'll give you an example. If that were to be reversed, and I'm going to give you a round number, this isn't exact, although the finance director has given me a number and I'm not good at recalling it offhand, but the city of Dublin could lose as much as $35 million a year in revenue. So that's a significant hit that's about a third or a little bit more of what the city brings in annually. It would be devastating.
All right, thank you, Dana. The next question is from Ray Curley. Ray, we have unmuted your mic. Go ahead and ask.
Thank you. I'm Ray Cully. I'm from the Villas of Ballantrae. And first of all, I wanted to say thanks for the reports, especially the police report. And we'll certainly do what we can to communicate that information. I'm assuming that all of these slides are available on the app. Is that correct?
What was that again, Ray?
I'm assuming that all of the slides are available on the app.
The slides are not available on the app, but we will be sending you a link, a YouTube link to this entire meeting with all of the presentations next week.
Okay. And I did have one other question. Were the loans that Brent Crawford mentioned, were they considered to be gifts or loans, or how exactly are they handled?
I'm not exactly sure which loans you're talking about. Can you maybe clarify that a little bit more?
Sure. Brent, in his presentation, Brent Crawford mentioned that there were certain gifts or some other considerations that were made. And I just wondered whether or not they were loans or whether or not they were handled as outright gifts or something like that.
Well, I think and I don't want to speak on their behalf, but he may have been alluding to, and we can send him an email, as Sue mentioned, and get clarification on that and get it back out to everyone. But I think he was alluding to some of the things that the Bridge Park did for its tenants. They did assist with some help with leases. I'm going to use the word forgiveness of leases. Now, whether that was leases that were forgiven for a period of time and then extended on the back end or completely forgiven, I'm not quite clear. But there was some forgiveness at least during the period, to help some of those tenants out. I think that's primarily what he was alluding to. Some of the other things that he alluded to that was very helpful with the tenants, particularly the restaurants, were the outdoor seating, where we did shut down the street in Longshore Avenue in order to allow outdoor seating, because as you know, in this condition, restaurants are probably lucky to seat 50% of their capacity in order to get the social distancing that they need. And so they shifted more seating outside, which was helpful to get their volumes up that they needed. Did it solve everything? No, some performing better than others. But for the most part, they're surviving better that way. But some businesses in Dublin did receive the PPP through federal government as part of the CARES Act initial round. Some of that money was out there. Now that would not have funneled through Bridge Park, but some of that money, I think some of our businesses did get access to. I don't have a real firm accounting of what that was. I have some sense of it, only in that our economic development department and was working with our Chamber of Commerce to try to guide people through the various webinars that the Small Business Administration and others were conducting through this to try to help people get access to that kind of funding. But we'll seek some clarity on that for you, because I'm sure I'm not quite answering all of it.
Thank you, Dana. Yes, Ray, we'll follow up with Crawford Hoying on that. And I believe Brian Griffith has another question. And after Brian, we'll take one more question, and I think we will wrap up. And if you have additional questions, you can always email city staff. Karina has been your key point of contact. Hopefully you are getting that email from her every Monday, which has our Dublin News Now e-news, and also some information and tidbits of news that we especially want to share with our HOA neighborhood leaders. So Brian, go ahead. I think your mic has been unmuted and you can ask your question.
Thanks, Sue. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. This is Brian Griffith from the Reserve Condos at Scioto Crossing. I only get one question, so I'm hard to choose, but I'm going to ask Chief Paise if he can address the issue that I faced with a number of police officers who believe that I am somehow working for a property manager, but as the president of the board, when I ask them to enforce a law on our property, I expect that they will understand that's an authoritative request for the property owner. Do you have any thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I'm not quite understanding your question.
Sure. So if an officer responds to an incident at our property and they are looking for information from the property owner, they want, if a crime occurs on your property, let's say a theft or an illegal dumping or an abandoned vehicle or any of the other problems we faced, when that officer responds and says, are you the property owner, or they say, I can't do anything about this because you're not the property manager, why do the Dublin Police think that the board of directors who owns that association that owns the property doesn't have authority as the property owner?
Yeah, I think I'm following a little clearer. I mean, I guess I need specifics on the incidents we've responded to, but that's certainly something we can, I can reach out to you after the meeting today, and if you can provide me some details, I can look at those calls that we've responded to in the past and figure out what the right communication is to our officers who are responding to bring clarity to our ability and capacity to resolve whatever problems you're talking about. Common areas, I presume, in the property at the condos. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right.
Issues.
Yes, yeah, no, I think I'm following where you're at. I mean, without specifics, I don't know that I can answer without the specifics of the calls we've responded to, but it's certainly something I can look into and again, reach back out to you and have some communication with our officers so we have clarity on who we need to talk to be able to resolve those issues.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you.
Very good.
All right, thank you. I do not see any additional questions, so I think we are going to wrap it up. It is 8:02, and we want to allow you to enjoy the rest of your evening. We do want to thank all of you for spending this little bit of a chilly, rainy evening with us tonight. At least you didn't have to leave your house, right? That's one benefit of a virtual meeting. We want to thank our speakers tonight and our city council members who were present with us tonight. And we will be sending you the link of this entire meeting, which is being live streamed on YouTube tonight. We will send that to you next week, and we will follow up with the Crawford Hoying question. And meanwhile, if there were some questions that came to mind, tonight, tomorrow, the next day, don't hesitate to reach out to Karina, and we will get the answers to you as best we can from our city experts. So have a great night. Stay safe, stay well. Most importantly, stay engaged. Thank you.